Thank you, Dr. Ram, for that very glowing introduction. And I must say that it's indeed a privilege for us teachers to have students like you, people who have blazed a trail on their own and who have helped thousands of people to learn life-saving procedures. It's indeed a privilege for me, and thank you for giving me an opportunity to be part of your professional journey. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to talk to you not as an emergency physician, but as a person who's had on-site experience with all kinds of tsunamis throughout my journey in life. When I heard Dr. Nanda talk about the 1999 cyclone, I remember very vividly being on a bridge in Orissa when the train came to a sudden stop, because I was on my way to Calcutta. The train stopped because it could not proceed any further because the railroad had been washed off. And I have personally experienced wind speeds of 180 kilometers per hour sitting in the train on a bridge, not able to go forwards or backwards. So I know what exactly it is. The reason why I wanted to talk about the tsunami of 2004 and have titled it as Memories Recalled and Lessons Learnt, it's because tsunami is not something that you talk about now, because it occurred 20 odd years ago and nobody really knows about it. And quite often we have relegated it to history. Even we heard our speakers about ISRO and the speakers ahead. Nobody really talks about tsunami anymore because we are more interested in the earthquakes and all other things which happen regularly. But what we need to remember is quite often what we think is what it is not really so. Because quite often the entire image that we have is something different when you turn by 180 degrees. And you realize that when you look at it from the perspective of a person who's been involved on site, the experiences that we have encountered is something which gives you a totally different perspective. So I'm going to talk to you about, not much about the theory part of it. I'm going to actually flip through a photo album which will show you pictures of what exactly happened on December 26th, 2004. The tsunami, as you might know, the word tsunami is actually a Japanese word. Tsu means actually a harbor. A nami means a wave. So, time immemorial, people in Japan, because the tectonic plate comes through that and tsunamis occur there very often, have observed a phenomenon by which huge waves used to affect their harbors. So that's how the term came in, and it was relegated to textbooks of emergency medicine, because one of the subspecialties we study in emergency medicine is called disaster medicine. And in disaster medicine, we learn about tsunamis. But it was only in 2004 that I could personally see and encounter what exactly the tsunami was all about. There was an earthquake which occurred under the ocean, a Richter scale of 9.3, and 9.3 is unrecorded in history. That's about the maximum which has ever occurred, and this occurred underwater, and that resulted in a massive tidal wave which was about 7 meters tall. And if you look at a picture, this is how you will see it. What exactly happens was when there is a displacement which occurs here, between two plates which occurred actually, there's a Burma plate and an Indo-Australian plate. These two tectonic plates can undergo many kinds of movements. One is side to side, it can also go up and down. So there was a vertical displacement because of which there was a huge big wave of water column which started, and as it comes towards the shore, because this becomes shallow, the waves become larger. So when you look at an artist's description, this is how an artist's description is of a tsunami. Massive, massive. But probably it wasn't this big, but this is a more realistic picture. This is from Sri Lanka, taken by a photographer, and that was the last thing he ever did, because after that he was washed away and only his camera was found. And thank God for those days we had films. So therefore, unlike an electronic camera, unlike a digital image, the film could be processed and they could see this picture. So this is a very valuable picture which gives us an idea as to what exactly happened. So as I said, God has blessed me with the opportunity to being on site, to looking at various disasters, and I want to talk about the tsunami and the medical response that we provided on December 27th. It was just one day later, because 26th I was on the train once again, traveling back after Christmas vacation, coming back to CMC Vellore, where I was working. So by the time I could reach, and then by the time I could set up, and by the time we could leave towards Nagapattinam and Velankani, that is where we were working. If you look at it, this is the map, and CMC Vellore is situated here. This actually takes about 8 hours normally, but we took 14 hours because the roads had been washed away and it was very, very bad. And during that time, firstly, we formed a primary team. Yes, I look quite different those days, but this was a long time ago. This was the primary team. We did not take any of the women with us because we were not sure as to what the situation was. But subsequently, we knew that we were able to take on women volunteers also with us. So together we went there. We started off, and as the day began to break, somehow it was not very good. It was very gloomy, very dull, and so was our mood because we did not know what we were going for. And this you see is the picture when we reached the collectorate. This is actually the collectorate office, and you don't know whether you can see the time. It's 3 o'clock in the morning, 3:41 to be precise. And these are all the victims who were being housed in the collectorate. And as the dawn was beginning to break, we could see large groups of people. And as we heard Dr. Nanda speak, these are all volunteers from all the local villages. And when we stopped and asked, why are you heading towards the disaster area? They said, we are going there to help. That, ladies and gentlemen, is something that we as Indians have to be very proud of. Yes, this phenomenon is not seen anywhere else in the world. If you look at take for example, Katrina, for example, in the US, it was a disaster. People were stealing, people were not helping, people were looting everything that they could. Nobody was helping anybody. But we in India have demonstrated time and again that the community is the one which reaches out and helps all our people. And as we were going, we could see the rice fields and dead bodies in there, lying, people who had died as they were working. This is 2 kilometers from the shoreline. So you can see how far the water had come deep into the shoreline. And boats were found 4 kilometers from the shoreline. These are not supposed to be here. This is on the other side of the villages where there's a cremation ground, far away from the shoreline. And boats were found everywhere where they should not be. And it is surprising that the buildings that we saw, large parts of the building were missing. They were not just collapsed. Large parts of the brick walls were missing. And instead there was debris from other places which were actually occupying. And the wall debris, pieces of the wall were found far away, where there were no houses. So you can imagine the power of the water which had lifted cement blocks and taken it far away. Mango orchards, which are supposed to be clean. This area produces large amount of mangoes for that part of Tamil Nadu, and there was debris littered everywhere. When we entered the village, it was unbelievable. And we could see that the fire service people, whom actually has not been mentioned, they were the people who were involved in the SNR, the search and rescue team. They were the ones who were carrying out the operations along with the public. The main thing was the smell of death. It was all pervading, and there were dead bodies scattered everywhere. And one of the jobs that we had to do was actually collect all the bodies. And we had to take them across where we were using JCB to dig huge pits and to bury all the decomposed bodies. There was no identification done because we had to dispose the bodies. So on day one, I helped personally to dump in and bury 600 bodies. So you can imagine the shock that we as healthcare givers are subjected to. That is something which is very, very significant that I want to stress upon. And finally, we want to reach where we wanted to reach, which was Velankani, and I was very happy to see that the church still stood intact. And what was surprising was that when the tsunami hit at 4 minutes past 9 o'clock, the church service had been over. One group had moved from inside the church towards, you see the wall which is here? You can see the wall. Beyond this is the beach. So the general tradition is people come to church, attend the mass, then they go out through the gate and onto the beach. And the next service begins. So when the tsunami struck, all those who were on the beach were completely taken away. And all those who were inside just miraculously escaped. Debris, as I said, from the shoreline was there everywhere. You can see where the church is at the end. See, oops, sorry. If that is the church, you can see the distance through which all the debris had come. And it was this debris which was actually made up of thorns which inflicted a lot of injuries, especially for children. So they were subjected to that. The government medical services were very much in action, and the disaster relief from all over the world were coming forward. This actually is to prevent cruelty to animals, and you can see the goat. One of the things which happened was many of these animals which survived were wandering aimlessly because all the landmarks which they knew of their house where they are supposed to be had gone away. So they were wandering around aimlessly without knowing where to go. And we heard how we have inappropriate facilities being dumped on us. I just put up one. These were tents which were put up. Not one person occupied, neither human nor animal, because these plastic tents become very, very hot during the daytime. So nobody wants to stay in them. And there were huge mountains of clothes which have been dumped through helicopters. And children were using them as jumping points. So they would pile these clothes near the trees and they would climb up the tree and jump from the tree. Clothes were useless. They were dumping sausages. Fishermen don't eat sausages. They eat only fish. They were useless. Only the dogs were eating. So it is very, very important that when we help them appropriately and not otherwise. Churches became homes for people. People used all public places, including schools, as camps. And that's where we had to do a lot of public health work. Dormitories were being built by volunteers using local material so that people can stay in them. Medical campsite had been set up in one of these places. This is where we were running one of our camps. One of the first things we did was clinical assessment. And that was necessary because, like for example, a child quite often gets submerged because the mother is carrying, mother is washed away. The child remains there, and child had to be assessed for immersion injuries and also other injuries because of impact. So my doctors and my nurses and everybody, these are my nurses, they were looking after the elderly. Also people, like for example, this man had developed cellulitis of his leg because he was a diabetic. Children, what was amazing is not one child even whimpered when we were treating them. You would normally know how when you take children to hospital, they'll be crying and kicking, I don't know. No child even whimpered. They all stood around, got the help that they wanted, and got the treatment that they wanted. IV lines starting. One of the important things that we were doing was also health education, especially for children. And most of these children that you see had lost their parents. Both parents. They were all the survivors. Siblings, parents, everybody they had lost. This is one of my favorite images because I studied in a school like this, in a government school in a village where I grew up. And I had classes under the village, under the tree. So therefore this is a very treasured image for me. We also took the health education to their local homes, wherever it was. Because like you can see this man, he doesn't have lower limbs. So therefore we had to go right there. One of the problems we were concerned about was the fear of a second wave. A second wave is something where a second wave of impact due to the damage which has occurred happens, and that's usually because of infections and cross-infections which occur between the survivors, and as well as the contamination of the water sources, because of which we have to make sure that there is no development of communicable diseases, including malaria and filaria and dengue. So you can see one of the people spraying the medication. This is one of my drivers. He was one of the ambulance drivers, and he is actually teaching all the local people about dengue. There was no big, there was no small. We were all the same. Yes, thank you. 2 more minutes, I should be over. We were putting bleaching powder everywhere in order to prevent the onset of diseases. We were making sure that the water pots in which they collected was all chlorinated adequately. So how exactly did we work? We had breakfast at 8 o'clock in the morning, strategized for the day, and we organized 4 camps in 4 different areas covering an area of 13 kilometers. The coordinator, that was me, I had to move between all the 4 sites for a second opinion, especially for management of a disease condition. There were no phones those days. So I was moving around on all these 4 places. I had fantastic communication with the local collector, because he said, "Sir, I have no idea about this tsunami." I said, "Don't you worry. Those days we didn't have. This is 2004. The collectors had not even heard about the word tsunami. Now it's very different." So we had bottled water for ourselves. Lunch was, if you get some, well and good. Otherwise, no lunch. We used to close at 6 o'clock, return to the base. Base was 30 kilometers away, and we had dinner at 8 o'clock in the night, and there was a debriefing of what exactly happened. So that was our day, and over 7 days, we treated 12,000 patients and also had shelter visits, health education, and home visits. So it was a very gratifying experience, but we had to cut short because there was a fear of a second tsunami coming up. We felt the aftershocks. First time I was feeling what it was like to stand when there is an earthquake. So since we were working close to the shore, there was a fear there would be a second tsunami, so we were evacuated by the government. So we had to leave at that time. So what I want to say is, this is one of our breakfast sessions, and we were strategizing for the day. The people in front, you see there are 2 drivers. The other 2 are 2 pharmacists. Then my doctors were there. There was no difference between us. We all worked together so beautifully. Yes. What do I remember? Sorry, I've just finished saying memories recalled. I'm just going to read the lessons learned. First and foremost, I understood. What do I remember? I understood. I experienced the fury of nature, the magnitude. Second was the stench of death. I had never had such an lasting experience. And I am personally a victim of PTSD. I would wake up in the middle of the night, up to about 6 to 8 months after the tsunami was over, and I was dreaming that I'm still working among them and evacuating dead bodies, and I could smell. So therefore, it was a very realistic and a very long-lasting trauma that I was subjected to, and so was my team. So subsequently, we organized a debriefing for ourselves in such a manner that we would get over what we had experienced. Mass burial of decomposed bodies. I've heard about this, I've read about this, but I have had the personal involvement in that. Source of livelihood, which was the sea, became the nemesis of death for these people. And also being with hundreds of children who had lost all that they had, all their relatives, everybody left alone in the world to be with them. And the inappropriate dumping of material that I showed you earlier. So these are all some of the things that I learned, including how to live without electricity for 1 week. Yes. What was the outcome of this? 1 tsunami jumped out from the textbooks and it became a reality. Second, we had 230,000 deaths. That's what they think it is, but I think it's more than 2.5 lakhs. So we are not talking about thousands, we are talking about lakhs and lakhs, making this one of the most deadliest disasters that has ever been recorded in history. There was an unprecedented, massive global response which came from all over the world. And that was something really nice to see. And as I mentioned earlier, I saw the community rise to the occasion to help each other out. And there has been a significant improvement in disaster preparedness and early warning systems. So am I happy with that? No. I'm not happy with that. I'm sorry, including ISRO. Because we just heard in passing that they talked about earthquakes. But if you remember one of his first slides, you saw that 25% of the country is prone for earthquakes. North India, it is prone because the tectonic plate goes through Nepal. And that's why in Nepal they have installed the International Institute of Seismology. And we as a country here in India, I want you to look at this picture very carefully. Okay, this is actually what happened in 2004. The epicenter started in Indonesia. And did you know in 2018, there was another tsunami which started in Indonesia, in Sulawesi. Luckily, it was only 7.8 Richter and only 14,000 people died in that area. What is there to say that it cannot be a Richter scale once again of 9.3? What is there to say that we will not be affected by tsunami again? As I said, we have forgotten. It's gone back to the history books again. The fact remains, are we ready? Do we have early sensing systems? Do we have early warning signs? And I want you to remember that tsunamis travel at 1,000 kilometers per hour. And the distance between Sulawesi and Chennai is 4,000 kilometers. Because I was in Indonesia just about 2 weeks ago. It's 4,000 kilometers, which means in 4 hours' time, if there is another tsunami which occurs, in 4 hours' time, all along, including Orissa, everywhere, along peninsular India, we will be affected by another tsunami. Are we ready? That's the message I want to leave behind. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir, for this, for the first-hand information and the pictures from the field of the 2004 tsunami. We all have gone through. I mean, we are all aware of this thing, but I am also listening from who was in the field. First time I am also listening from a person who has observed all these things. And about the warning system, you are maybe aware, the Indian National Center for Ocean Information Services, INCOIS Hyderabad, has established a tsunami warning system. This is one of the best in the world, and it is working, and it is capable of giving another, if another tsunami is there, any